The information presented in this program is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any condition, illness, or disease. The depiction of successful results from the treatments discussed in this presentation are examples of the possible benefits and do not guarantee results. The decision to start any medical treatment should be made only after discussing all benefits and risks with a healthcare provider.
Welcome to Healthy Dose with Dr. Joe. Are you ready to repair damage to your body? Replace what is depleting to regain your youthful vitality? Regenerate what is now degenerating? Dr. Joseph Gambardella is a doctor of chiropractic medicine and an anti-aging health practitioner diplomat. He was the first doctor in Miami to complete his fellowship training in stem cell therapies. As the owner of Advanced Physical Medicine and Rehab of Miami, he provides patients with the most sophisticated and safest treatments in the market today. Join Dr. Joe for the next half hour and learn about the medical advancements that have helped thousands avoid surgery and pain meds. From stem cells to hormones and everything in between. Get ready to feel empowered. Get ready to regain control and reclaim your life. Now, here's your Healthy Dose with Dr. Joe.
And we're back with another episode of the Healthy Dose podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Gambardella of Advanced Physical Medicine and Rehab. APMRmiami.com is where you can find us, and on our website, www.apmrmiami.com. I'm here today with a very good friend of mine, Jesse Gutierrez. Jesse is a licensed nutritionist, been in practice for over 30 years here in Miami, and he is a leading expert in nutrition as well as a wellness and nutritional coach. Jesse and I met in the gym. Jesse, we met, probably about 5-6 years ago?
At least. And let me say, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And you're doing so much good for so many people. And having the opportunity to share the mics with you is an honor, Joe. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you. And you know, I feel the same about you.
Thank you.
We clicked almost right away. You know, it's been a long time.
Well, a lot in common.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there we were, young men working out, right?
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. Yeah. And healthcare providers or professionals using natural medicine and alternative medicine. Yeah. And there's a great demand for what you do and for what I do. Yeah. We are a one-dimensional medical community, and there's very little that consumers really have at their disposal when they need expertise and honest advice in alternative medicine. Yep. So good people like you, I think, are important. And again, I'm happy to be part of the team.
Oh, well, thanks, Jesse. When we work out in the gym, it's very easy for people to come in. They're easily overwhelmed. They don't know what equipment to use, but relatively easy once you've been there a few times to kind of learn the basics of how to train back and legs. But the side that most people are ill-informed about, not through any fault of theirs, is the nutritional aspect, right? Bodybuilders, athletes, they'll say that at least 80% of their ability to perform at a high level, to recover properly, has to do with nutrition, which is really what we want to focus our show about today, which is nutrition for a couple of key topics. I mean, we're in the Miami area, so Miami is a very vain place. Everybody wants to look good, look their best, feel their best. And some of the areas that, at least our patients have been struggling with is weight loss.
Yes. And that's a national issue. In fact, the number one cause of premature death or preventable death, according to the Centers for Disease Control, is in fact obesity. And we're talking about 20, 30 pounds over our, let's call college weight or high school weight. I mean, it sneaks up over the years. Usually around the holidays, we gain 3, 4, 5 pounds. Then New Year's resolution, we lose 2, maybe 3, but we keep a couple of them. And then we add it on to the next year. When 10 years go by, we've gained 20 pounds, and we haven't even noticed.
What's interesting about what you said is that gaining 20 pounds, what it looks like on the outside is one thing. What it does to the inside is another. In particular, for a practice like ours, where we're helping people with bad knees, bad lower backs, Jesse, every single pound of excess weight that you gain is the equivalent of 4 extra pounds on the joints, crushing the joints, making them more and more unhealthy over time. And, there's so many different programs out there, pain and injuries aside, about what to do to lose weight. There's different programs. There's the paleo diet, there's the keto diet, there's Weight Watchers, and on and on and on. In your opinion, as a nutritional expert, where does someone start?
It's interesting because diets are almost like religion and politics. Everybody has an opinion. You have to be careful who you're talking to about this subject because a lot of people are invested in one approach or another. I've studied all the diets. I've seen everything come and go, and I've come to a conclusion. There's something to be said with simplicity. When there's so many details, when a person is trying to follow so many opinions, they get lost. They get lost in the details. So I try to maximize effectiveness by focusing on what has the greatest impact on weight and weight loss. And that is, as far as nutritionally speaking, counting your carbohydrates. I mean, listen, since the 1970s, health authorities have been preaching low-fat diets, avoid saturated fats, and Americans have followed this advice progressively. We have, for the past 30 years, eaten less and less saturated fats ever recorded in American history. Yet, obesity remains to be an epidemic. It's actually gone up. Diabetes has more than doubled since the 1970s, and heart disease remains the number one cause of death. So we're eating less saturated fat, yet we're more obese, more diabetic, and more dead due to heart attacks than ever before. Something's not working, and the what's not working is that fats are really not the main culprit in nutritional evils, let's just say. I mean, it's the carbohydrates that really inhibit the fat metabolism. There was a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. This study, Joe, followed 350,000 people over a period of 20 years. And they were trying to, it's a big meta-analysis. I mean, that's a large sample group. And they were trying to figure out, the authors of the study were trying to figure out what impact nutrition and particularly fat had on heart disease. At the conclusion of the study, they could not find evidence that saturated fats contributed to heart disease at all. There was, you mentioned different popular diets, and it reminds me of another study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine by a Harvard, I forget his name right now, but he was a Harvard professor of nutrition, and he wanted to compare the impact of 3 of the more popular diets to see which was the best, because that's the question. What's the best diet? I get that all the time. I'm sure you do as well. He compared the diet based on the American Heart Association guidelines, which is low calorie, low fat, a lot of fiber, etc., the Mediterranean diet, which is also a portion controlling, calorie counting, low fat diet, and then what now is known as the keto diet or the low carb diet. Before it was called the Atkins diet, South Beach diet. We keep changing the name, but what we're talking about is focusing on carbohydrates. At the end of the study, those that were on the low carb diet had the healthiest cholesterol levels of the 3 groups. They had the highest ratio of HDL to LDL, which is good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. And the weight loss was more than double. Now, the interesting thing is that of the 3 diets, the only one that didn't portion control or calorie count was a low-carb diet. You can basically eat as much as you want till you're full, what you like, as long as it's not a carb, and then that you have to limit. That seems to work for a lot of people.
You know what, Jesse? I'll tell you, one of the things that I get most commonly from patients is they tell me, but I don't eat carbs. I'm not having sodas, I'm not having candy bars. And they think that's all carbs are.
Well, yeah, exactly. You have to count them. And I ask people, they say, well, can you give me a diet? Let's lower carbs to X amount based on the person and their needs. I'll estimate what I think is appropriate. And then when they start asking me a question, well, how many carbs does this have? How many carbs does that have? I go, no, that's your homework. Every time you sit down, you have to look it up, because people identify certain iconic carbs like bread or rice or cake or candy or pasta, but they don't necessarily acknowledge or notice that oatmeal is a carb. That whole grains and fruits and organic vegetables, and there's carbs in that as well. So we have to do the homework, and you'll be surprised how many healthy carbs are not letting us lose weight. A lot of people tell me, I stopped eating white rice, I'm eating couscous.
Right.
Get rid of the carbs. Well, couscous is just another carb.
At the end of the day, carbs are carbs. It really doesn't matter the source. We're not talking about bodybuilders that, are counting down to the exact number of carbs that they eat per day. But for patients that are trying to lose weight, it matters. It's all the same. Sugar is sugar.
Sugar is sugar, and all carbs are broken down into ultimately glucose, except for the fiber, of course, and eventually triglycerides, cholesterol, body fat.
So in terms of, we call them macros, right? The macronutrients, the essential foods that are very, very important for building muscle, for cellular function, for losing weight. You have proteins, you have fats, and you have carbohydrates.
3.
So, you're either going to get energy. Most people think if I don't have carbs, I'm not going to get energy. Well, you can get energy from fats as well.
That's right. And not only that, you sustain energy. The thing about a high carb diet is that it makes us tired all the time because we get a glucose peak and then that valley where we kind of sugar crash, and then we're kind of like yawning in the middle of the day, and we're dragging, and then we're craving more carbs. So for someone wanting to lose weight, the important thing to understand about carbohydrates is that they make us tired, so it doesn't help us with the workouts. They actually stimulate the appetite, make us hungry, want to eat all the time. And it also inhibits the fat metabolism, because when the body secretes insulin to stimulate the glucose, the fat is no longer available. So the body is running on sugar and sort of storing and ignoring its fat. So sometimes people go to the gym and the first thing they do is they carb up before a workout.
Yeah.
That person, if he or she's trying to lose weight, just protected his body fat from any consumption.
Yeah.
So this is why there's so much information that it becomes overwhelming. You mentioned there are 3 macronutrients. This is Nutrition 101, everything you need to know to guarantee weight loss forever. 3 types of macro foods: protein, carbs, and fat. All you need to count to lose weight effectively is a carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the fat. Don't worry about the protein. If you count the carbs, the rest will take care of themselves.
Let me tell you something else that's interesting, Jesse. So, in our office, we do a lot of lab work. We're getting people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s with low energy. They've, quote unquote, been on these diets. Granted, they haven't followed them correctly. A lot of them, they haven't counted the macronutrients, but we'll run some lab work and we'll find out they're depleted in some key hormones that help increase energy as well. One of the things that I often get, though, is I've been seeing a trainer. I've really upped my protein significantly. So I have patients that weigh 150 pounds, 180 pounds, and they're consuming 250 grams of protein, right? Maybe not necessarily a bad thing if you're burning through that energy, but one of the things that I let people know is that there is a process in the body where excess protein actually converts into sugar, carbohydrates.
That's right.
It's called gluconeogenesis, right? So if you're taking in too much protein, your body will convert it into sugar. So it's another way that you trap your body into fat storage and not being able to burn muscle. I think one of the most important things is like it's too much information for people to process.
Exactly. And here's the thing about of course the excess of saturated fat is bad for you, and too much protein, too many calories. But the thing is that fats and proteins tend to take care of themselves. In other words, when you eat protein and fat, you get full. And you don't want to eat right away a lot more of it. That's not true with carbs. Carbs, you can eat yourself into a grave because your body will just ask for more and ask for more because you get the highs and lows of blood sugar. Even when the caloric energy is suffice for your activities, you're getting this false alarm of appetite or hunger because of the fluctuations in blood sugar levels. So, in economics, we say count the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. In nutrition, and this is an oversimplification. I want to, there are many, many important details, and I know this becomes a little bit controversial because, again, it's like politics and religion. So there's a lot of people invested in certain ideologies in nutrition, like politics. This is just basic, fundamental oversimplification for the person who's not going to make nutrition and fitness a career. For us, is fascinating. So we like the details, right? They're just trying to get through the day. So they want something very simple, something. What are those books? For dummies.
Computers for Dummies. Macronutrients for Dummies.
Nutrition for Dummies. This is Nutrition for Dummies 101. There are 3 macronutrients: proteins, fat, carbohydrates. Count the carbs. Keep that under a certain number, be it 80, 110, depending on what your goal is, and you'll notice that the rest will take care of themselves. Now, fitness is key. Supplements are monumental. But as far as nutrition, we can kind of reduce all this complicated theory and science on health and nutrition and micronutrients and biochemistry to three things. And really one, carbohydrates.
So Jesse, with Healthland Nutrition, when someone's going to get started with this, it's easy. It's easy once you get started, and it's like learning a new language, except you could learn this language in a week. But initially getting started, getting the information, they come see you at your store, you sit down with them, do a consultation, find out what their goals are. You'll put together a program of how many macronutrients they need to build muscle, how many they need to lose fat. So that's the best place to start. Go see a specialist. Go see someone who's licensed in this. Vitamin Shoppe is a great place. We send patients there all the time to get some key supplements, but they don't have licensed nutritionists on staff. Jesse, being a licensed nutritionist, is your best bet if your goals are specifically to lose weight quickly, make gains in the gym, put on some muscle on your shoulders, your chest, your back, and get a small waist. That's where you start. So once they've done this and they've kind of gotten this recipe down, there's some key supplements, and you mentioned physical fitness, that play a huge role in this. Why don't we start out with some of the best supplements to aid in weight loss that you've really found that work well over the years?
There aren't many.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds, no, thousands of supplements and clever names, but there's really a fistful of active ingredients that have clinically really been shown to be effective. One example is CLA, conjugated linolenic acid. You see studies where they have comparative studies where patients are given identical diet and exercise regimens. The CLA group will lose more pounds doing exactly the same thing. Another one I like recommending, and I've had great success with, is L-carnitine. In high doses. This is a free-form amino acid that helps transport fats to the mitochondria of the cell, and sort of, I call it the fat Uber or taxi. It kind of picks up the fat from storage, the midsection, thighs, or wherever, and takes it to the cell for energy.
Yep.
And that's the goal. When we're trying to lose weight, listen, stored fat is a savings account. The body's hanging on to it like we're hanging on to our savings account. This is why lowering carbohydrates is such an important aspect, because you literally need to starve your body of carbs so it has no choice but to go to its savings account. Otherwise, it's not going to touch its savings account. It's just going to keep asking for more carbs. You're going to be craving more carbs. So the L-carnitine is effective. I like chromium supplements, chromium picolinate and others. Life Extension has some excellent products. This is a mineral that helps stabilize blood sugar levels, which is key because, again, appetite is a destabilization to a degree of your blood sugar level. There was a study a couple of years ago that verified that when you start the day with whole eggs, fried eggs, or eggs and bacon, fat, protein, you have, for the next 36 hours, you eat less than when you start your day with a carbohydrate, like a toast or breakfast cereal, because one is a carb and the other one isn't. So, the reason for that is that once your blood sugar level goes up with your toast, morning toast, then, it goes down and you get the low, and then your brain is craving more carbs. With the eggs, it's fat, it's protein. It doesn't stimulate your appetite. So this is, one of the reasons why when we talk about an excess of protein and fat, we can get into all those details. But at the end of the day, my experience has been, if you control the carbs, you're not going to overeat fat and protein. It satisfies you. You're kind of full. So I'd like the chromium to help suppress appetite. These are very simple, basic nutrients. The L-carnitine, the CLA, then there's the arginine and all this. But at the end of the day, exercise and lowering carbs.
Very, very important.
Those are the two keys.
What's happened, just because of poor management with diet over time, is that some people have actually done some damage too in their ability to lose weight because they become insulin resistant or they become diabetic. So what do those people do, right? They've accumulated a lot of belly fat. They may or may not be taking a drug like metformin or glucophage. Maybe they're even taking insulin. What we found is that diet modification, the time that you eat, the time that you exercise is very, very important. So here's a couple of key takeaways. one of the best ways to burn fat for energy is to do your exercise when you're depleted, right? So ideally that would mean exercising on an empty stomach, right? After you've had a medical evaluation to deem that this is all appropriate, exercising on an empty stomach, you're going really straight into the little bit of carbs that are left into the system, and the only place you're going to get energy is from fat.
Right.
So if you really want to lose inches quickly, it's exercising on an empty stomach. If you have to get up early with the kids and you can't exercise to the end of the day, depleted cardio. That means cardio after your weight training is depleted. So you'll burn through a lot of the carbs during your weight training session, and then doing the cardio afterwards will help. And then the other thing is, how do you make your body less insulin resistant, right? So how do you know if you're insulin resistant or diabetic? Obviously, a couple of the key blood markers, you got to look at your fasting glucose, but you have to look at something called hemoglobin A1C, because that's not dependent on whether or not you're fasting. That really measures your ability to burn fats and sugars over the last 90 days. Right. So if you're insulin resistant, one of the best supplements that's come to market, actually by Life Extension, is called AMPK Activator. Right. We were talking about it before the show. AMPK is a activated protein kinase, is an enzyme that helps mobilize sugar, right? It helps take it out of the blood, transport it into the liver so your body can actually burn it for energy. Because the thing is if sugar's sitting in the blood, your body can't access it. It could only access sugar stores from the liver. So if you can't transport that sugar from the blood to the liver, basically it stays in the blood and damages peripheral vessels, right? It could damage your eyes, poor wound healing, and this is what a lot of diabetics suffer from. Right. Small blood vessels that affect the brain as well. So people will notice that maybe they don't remember things as well as they should. Brings us into a whole nother category of supplements.
Which, by the way, there's smart pills, and I mean, they really exist. They really work, and they're used all around the world to improve memory, even in situations like Alzheimer's and dementia. And a lot of people aren't taking advantage. Don't know that these neuronutrients really work. So as you talk about memory, that's certainly a subject that we could kind of
segue into it, because once you have Alzheimer's, it's too late. Right. Like when people come into us with joint pain, shoulders, knees, and hips, once you see the damage on an X-ray, it's 50% gone. In terms of the cartilage. If you had an MRI, you could diagnose it when 1% is lost. So the whole thing is, prevention is the best medicine. If you want to protect your brain, you have to decrease inflammation systemically. So one of the best supplements that we like to recommend is a fish oil that has EPA and DHA, reduces inflammation in the brain. You mentioned phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine, ginkgo, right?
Yes, acetylcholine. These neuronutrients aren't exactly anti-inflammatory. They're actually nutrients that stimulate neurons and actually protect them. Acetylcholine, for example, was really developed by the Japanese as a stroke victim medication or treatment. And to this day, in Japan and countries like Spain, acetylcholine was approved years ago by the Ministry of Health, their FDA, and used daily by neurologists with stroke victims that have lost their ability to talk or have partial paralysis. This is standard prescription for treatment in those patients. We don't even consider it here in the States. Many people don't even know about it. Head trauma, amnesia, dementia, even Alzheimer's, acetylcholine, along with some of these other neuronutrients, are commonly used. When something has prescription status in multiple countries and is used medically, where a doctor is following their patient's progression and results, that speaks volumes of the effectiveness of that nutrient. And a lot of times products are marketed and distributed before there's any real science behind them. The health food industry, the supplement industry is very lax and very poorly regulated. So you get a lot of disinformation. But there are some real powerful nutrients out there that have passed the real test of time, are used medicinally around the world, and we're not taking advantage of them. When we talk about memory, there's acetylcholine, phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine is actually a lipid. It actually increases the conduction of electroconduction between neurons. It's used regularly to treat Alzheimer's patients in many countries, and it also elevates mood and disposition, particularly in elderly patients. So, I mean, phosphatidylserine, it increases in mood, it helps memory. Acetylcholine is one of them. You have alpha GPC, which is another important. There's another one called vinpocetine, which increases circulation to the brain and oxygenation. This is interesting because a couple of years ago, a pharmaceutical company tried to argue that this herbal extract was actually a drug because in Hungary and other countries, it's had prescription status for decades. Well, what that pharmaceutical company was trying to do, and I won't mention their name, is they were trying to get it reclassified so that they can get the patent and come out with a prescription drug. But what that tells me is this over-the-counter, relatively inexpensive vinpocetine, doggone, it works.
Yeah.
You have pharmaceutical companies that are hiring attorneys and going through extensive legal battles. This went on for a couple of years, actually, trying to get this reclassified. So they know that this stuff really works and it's a gold mine. No one talks about it because it's over the counter. You can get it at my store or any health food store if you can find it. Again, few people know about it, but it enhances memory. Be it a young student, a professional with a lot of stress, or someone who's retiring and less mental activity. These neuronutrients really make a difference with short-term memory. And to your point, can it prevent something like Alzheimer's? We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. So I'm with Jesse Gutierrez from Healthland Nutrition. We're going to be back right after this.
Repair your body. Replace your key hormone levels. Allow your body to regenerate itself without surgery or meds. When it comes to your health, the best plan is preventative. If you wait for symptoms to show, you could be too late. With over 40 years of combined clinical experience, all under one conveniently located state-of-the-art facility, Dr. Joe is on the leading edge of regenerative and physical medicine. Take control of your health and get a free consultation and evaluation. Visit us at apmrmiami.com or call 305-598-8788. 305-598-8788. 305-598-8788.
And we're back with my friend Jesse Gutierrez from Healthland Nutrition. Off the air, I was talking to Jesse. I said, Jesse, you got to do something for our listeners. You know, that there's so much great information. What kind of a deal can you give them this week when they mentioned that they saw you and heard you on this podcast?
Well, you were negotiating here was a money deal. I mean, but listen, I think it's a great idea, and absolutely for your listeners, I'll do a buy one get one free on some of the premium supplements. Let me say, by the way, that I don't have my own line of products, and I don't have really any commitment to any particular brand or company. The reason I hand select certain brands and work with them extensively is because they've earned my trust, and I know they're quality products, and I've had the opportunity to evaluate them over the years. To that point, omega-3 there's a good and a bad about omega-3. The good is 30 years of research proving multiple benefits, be it vision, inflammation, reduction in incident of heart attacks, death due to heart attacks, even memory because it has DHA, the docosahexaenoid. I mean, I give my small children DHA to assure good neurological development and to avoid attention deficit disorder. And I also give it to my father who's in his 80s so he can maintain a sharp mind and clean arteries. Yeah. But out of every 10 omega-3 products I see on the shelves in big chains, Joe, I'll find one that I can recommend in good conscience. Mm-hmm. Life Extension has some very good omega-3s. Nordic has some very good omega-3s. Carlson's Labs has some very good omega-3s. Solgar has one that's called Solgar Omega-3 950 milligrams. It's really almost a carbon copy of Lavazza, which is a prescription omega-3, very good product. It's actually a little stronger, and I say copy, it was actually out before Lavazza was out, so maybe, I don't know who copied who, but that particular omega-3, you buy one for your podcast listeners. Second, completely free.
That's amazing.
So that's one. The CoQ10, we could do the same thing.
CoQ10. So let's talk a bit about CoQ10, but just going back to the omegas. If there was a supplement that existed out there to reduce inflammation, in other words, to make you feel better, to help with recall and memory, if you want to get the most for the least, it's the omega-3s. That's got to be one of the baseline supplements that we all start with, omega-3s.
You know, and it's interesting because the aging process is a lot of fun, and there are certain things that are common in all of us. So, you know, a lot of people approach me and say, Jesse, I don't like taking pills, and I'm not going to take a bunch of supplements. What really is the top 1, 2, or 3 supplements that everyone should take? Because if it's more than a couple of supplements, I'm not going to do it. And for the generally healthy person, doesn't have a specific problem, but it's aging like all of us, I'd say, like you pointed out, the omega-3s is a pearl. And when we go into the research, there's so many benefits, so much bang for your buck.
Yeah, so we don't even think, it's an absolute fact it works. You have to, that's number one. So we both agree on that. Another one on my top 3 is CoQ10.
CoQ10, without question. CoQ10, for cardiovascular health, CoQ10 is really phenomenal. I mean, this is a coenzyme that exists in the mitochondria of the cell and forms part of the respiration chain. So it actually increases cellular oxygenation and vitality. With age, levels decline, and the vitality of our cells decline, particularly the heart muscle. The CoQ10 is actually affected not only by age, but by medications like statin drugs. I mean, over 50% of men over 60 are on statin drugs in the United States.
And this is really, it's standard medical practice now that if you're prescribed a statin drug, you need to let your patients know that they will become depleted in ubiquinol and CoQ10.
Right.
They have to supplement.
But let me say something. I feel like a pioneer in that message, because back, I'm going to age myself, but late 80s, early 90s, I was full throat on articles, television interviews, radio broadcasts, recommending and talking about the importance of CoQ10, particularly people taking statin drugs. And everybody would go ask their doctor, and the doctor says, no, there's nothing proven on that.
Yeah.
This is, back in the 80s, CoQ10 was already a prescription medication in Japan.
Yeah.
And here, so I feel like if now that it's mainstream and trending, there should be some recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, someone should, I mean, who's the godfather of CoQ10?
There you go.
So,
yeah.
This is something that I'm glad to see that finally it's beginning. It's really just starting. I see some projections on CQ10, some industry business projections on where coenzyme Q10 sales are projected to go. It's finally catching on. Now, we're talking 2019.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and the number 1 and 2 leading causes of death in the U.S. right now are heart disease and cancer. Not necessarily in that order, but if you're gonna be taking something that's going to contribute to one of the top 2 leading causes of death, like a statin drug, you better be doing your research as an informed patient to make sure that you're taking the antidote to that.
And CoQ10, by the way, has been associated with a lower incidence of all forms of cancer.
Yeah.
So that, malignant cells don't like oxygen. They look for an anaerobic environment to really, develop. Yep. So CoQ10 seems to help keep cancer away. Strengthens the heart muscle, even helps with blood pressure. There was a meta-analysis of like 10 studies that averaged out hypertensive patients, how much their blood pressure was adjusted just by taking coenzyme Q10. And the systolic pressure was like 17 points and the diastolic like 10. Yep. This is just taking CoQ10. Yep. Another study of patients that were already on medication for blood pressure. Take CoQ10, doctors and more than 50% of the patients are able to reduce their medication. Some of them get them off altogether. Yep. So, I mean, CoQ10, because it strengthens the heart muscle. Originally, the Japanese would extract CoQ10 from beef heart. So, I mean, it benefits the whole body, but the heart most of all. And to your point, number one cause of death, the heart, here's CoQ10. That's absolutely one of the key nutrients.
And think of the alternative to that, is that when you come in ultimately with damaged joints, it's due to loss of peripheral circulation. So all disease and inflammation in some way has to do with the inability of the body to absorb oxygen or produce oxygen. And so when you have damaged joints over time, one of the first things that goes is the mitochondria. It can't produce enough energy for enough healthy cells to replace damaged cells. And when you have large numbers of cells being killed off or dying at one time, that's degeneration. So you can come to an office and do laser therapy and pay hundreds of dollars a session to get a laser light to stimulate mitochondrial function, or you can go to your store, buy CoQ10, and take it.
Well, if they mention your podcast, or if they call, and I can mail to anywhere in the U.S. as well, they'll get a 2-for-1 for the Kaneka Japanese source CoQ10, which is considered still the best.
You know what, Jesse? What's the best number for patients to contact you or listeners to find you?
They can call the store. It's 305-445-3320.
Excellent.
305-445-3320, and I'm on Coral Way and 32nd Avenue, 3202 Coral Way, in Miami, Florida, near Coral Gables here.
A licensed nutritionist in practice for over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
Incredible. And one of the things,
I had acne and hair back then.
You know what, Jesse, listen, I want to also make mention that we live in Miami, heavily Spanish population, and some people don't come out because they don't feel comfortable going into the store. Someone's there that doesn't speak Spanish, and they have to use a translator to bring their son. But you're fluent in Spanish. You communicate. You're on Telemundo, Univision. You've been all over the place, and you cater to the Spanish population as well.
Well, really, my niche has been the Spanish community, and most of my programs, and I currently have 4 different programs on different stations, and I do TV appearances. It's all really Spanish language. I do much more of that than English-speaking programs. Although I started in English-speaking radio, WFPL in Fort Lauderdale. I don't even know that station is still around, but again, a lot of history. We don't have that much time, but it's been really interesting, because when I started, CoQ10 was CoQ what? When a patient asked a doctor.
Yeah.
Now, to your point, it's being prescribed together or recommended together with the statin drugs. In Germany, by the way, and other European countries, when a patient would get a statin drug prescription, not only would they get a CoQ10 recommendation, but they would also get a milk thistle silymarin, which is a liver protector, prescription to go along with it. And yes, a phytomedicine that has prescription status in most of Europe is milk thistle. In Spain, it's called Legalon, for example. And they were doing this when, we didn't even know anything about it. I saw a couple years back an interesting study sponsored by Miami's Children's Hospital, where children with leukemia that were receiving chemo, they're very sensitive to the chemo, many times would have to discontinue treatment. Well, a lot of parents doing research on their own would give their kids milk thistle prior to treatment, and they were resisting the chemo much better than the untreated kids. So Miami's Children did a study. Now, and it showed to be effective, of course, but we know this already because there's so much research and so much in the medical community abroad that we can, really learn about, these supplements. So it's fascinating how over the years things are starting to become glucosamine. The first time I heard about glucosamine, chondroitin, there was no human supplement company making it. In fact, the only ones in America that knew about glucosamine were veterinarians, because it was actually already a medication for hip dysplasia. It was Cosamine. It was actually the brand. And I remember when I found out that glucosamine existed, and the only reason I found out is because there was a tourist that at the time I was working part-time in a health food store, and she walks in with a box that looks kind of like an Alka-Seltzer box, and she says, this is a natural medicine that my rheumatologist prescribes me, and I'm here in Miami for several months, and they told me you sell natural medicine. I looked at it, and it said in Spanish, aporte de glucosamina. I had like an insert with literature, like our pharmaceuticals here, and it said, distributed strictly through prescription. So when I read that, I said to her, I argued with her, I said, this must be a prescription medication because it says it's by prescription. And she says, no, the doctor says it's natural. And I started researching it, and I was excited to learn that there was a natural medicine that was elevated to prescription status and used successfully for some time now. And when I look for it, only our dogs are getting it here in the U.S. Yeah. And it was a couple years later that it became available for human consumption. So, the whole field of natural medicine supplement have really developed. I've seen it kind of grow around me. And it's exciting. It's exciting to have been there, at ground zero.
Yeah, your work is paying off, and all the education and teaching and research.
I do my small part. I do my small part, but the hunger by the consumer
is greater now than it's ever been. Let's go to at least number 3 on my list. Very, very important. If I said there was a supplement that prevents cancer, protects your brain, elevates mood, protects your joints, helps build muscle and helps you lose fat, increases your sex hormones like testosterone, which makes you feel better, perform better, and it's on the market and it's pennies a day to take it, everybody would want to know what it is, and it's vitamin D. Vitamin D3. It's so important. It's so important. And 99% of the patients that we evaluate are not only low, but they're completely depleted. And natural sources of vitamin D are sunlight and milk. We live in Florida. You're never going to get more sun than someone who lives here. And 99% of the patients that we evaluate are clinically low, which means that you're either getting the benefits or you're not. So it has to be in the top 3. Specifically, going back to other shows and podcasts that we've done, when we evaluate blood work, it is very, very important that you go to a professional that doesn't just look in the column to see if something's out of range. Right. If you're trending low or trending high, you need to know that. Functional medicine really addresses that. That's what we do here at Advanced Physical Medicine and Rehab. The range for healthy vitamin D, not even healthy, the ranges of vitamin D are 30 to 100. That's a 70-point swing. If you test at 75, you're getting protection from everything that I just mentioned. If you test at 31, you're getting zero protection from anything I just mentioned. But if you're 75 or you're 31, guess what they call you? Normal.
Right.
So if you don't go to an educated practitioner to be able to let you know that you are getting no benefits, even though you're quote unquote in the normal range, you're really shorting yourself. So you got to be an educated consumer, listening to podcasts like this, going to see you at your supplement store is going to make all of the guesswork, all of the hard work and research on what are the best supplements to take easy. And people are looking for something fast, quick, and easy, and that's the best way.
And one of the things I appreciate about your work and your clinic and your location is the honesty and the intention. Because let's be frank, there's a lot of interests really leading disinformation, particularly online and through different sources. So a lot of times well-intending consumers are misguided because someone's trying to sell something, So there's not a whole lot of money in selling vitamin D. It's too inexpensive, So we make up these stories, we ignore that, and we talk about other things, or companies do and market other things that have very little benefit. So I like where this is going. The show's kind of going to what are those top supplements that you should absolutely be taking, no matter what. And we're making a list. Another one that I would throw in the list.
What's your number 3? So yours is fish oil, CoQ10.
The D, I'm good with the D after that. Let's go number 4, glucosamine, chondroitin. Yep. Everybody understands the importance of exercise, not just for physical health and weight management, but emotional health, memory even. Studies in psychology on the impact of exercise in helping control anxiety and depression are phenomenal. I saw a study not long ago where they had clinically depressed patients and they were treated with either exercise or a pharmaceutical antidepressant. both groups of patients improved, but the exercise patients improved even more than the prescription patients. So this is remarkable, and we're all stressed, and we're all a little overweight, and we're all. Exercise is key. Yes. But where am I going with this? Glucosamine chondroitin. If there's one thing that's going to keep us from exercising, it's the articular degeneration, it's arthritis, the wear and tear on joints. The knee goes, now you're really limited.
Yep.
And it affects our overall health, emotional and physical. Yep. So it's important to control or really prevent that degenerative process, and glucosamine chondroitin is a key nutrient.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were speaking about before the show, is that there's 98% of your body, once it's injured, has the ability to heal and repair itself. When you go to the gym and you work out arms, for example, right? You're actually tearing muscle.
Right.
You come back 5 days later, the muscle's bigger and stronger. If you do that with proper diet and you add a bunch of years to it, they call you a bodybuilder.
Right.
You do the same thing, you do a bad move and you injure your lower back, you injure your knee, you injure your shoulder or your hip. 5 days later.
You just described, you have my medical history available?
The point I was making, 5 days later, they call you injured. And if it happens over and over, you become disabled. Right. So what's the difference? Why does one part of the body have the ability to get bigger and stronger and recover, and the other one doesn't? And here we go, really dovetailing it all together. It's that tissue, like your meniscus, your disc, your labrum, it doesn't have a blood supply. Yeah. It doesn't have enough of a blood, so not enough circulation. And tissues that don't have an exposure to high amounts of oxygen will not heal. Yeah. And that's when you become candidates for ozone and prolozone therapy and tissue grafts that contain the stem cells. And all of these things that we mentioned in previous shows, they help your body recover. Your body is able to recover naturally without drugs and surgery, but they're costly and they cost time to do. Right. Our obligation as an office is to make them affordable, but the only thing that you can do to prevent the necessity of doing a procedure like that, or worst case scenario, having to replace the joint or undergo invasive procedures like surgery on a disc for the lower back, is keep what you have healthy.
Yes.
And since you're not going to get more oxygen to a joint, nutrition. You have to start supplementing these products before you get injured. So it has to be on the menu.
And I've seen glucosamine work in elderly patients that are candidates for knee replacement. And they're agonizing. 6 months later, taking glucosamine, they're relatively pain-free, or at least their pain's gone down to a tolerable level, and they have quality of life, and they didn't have the surgery. If on top of that we lose weight, but of course it's a catch-22, because how do I exercise and walk to lose weight if my knee hurts? So this is where it becomes a challenge. That's where nutrition becomes such a key point as far as, counting the carbs. But the movement and the feeding of joints is key. As we talk of an evolution of natural medicine, physical therapy is an example that I've seen over the decades really gain credibility as far as, in the eyes of medicine or, conventional medicine. There was a time where physical therapy wasn't, it was optional. Now, when I had my shoulder injury, I had shoulder surgery, as you know, Joe, a couple of years ago, the orthopedic surgeon was prescribing physical therapy even before the surgery. So, this is wonderful. And what is PT, and, other than really exercise? Yep. So before we get an injury and we need physical therapy by a physician, simple exercise and glucosamine is almost like an ongoing nutritional support and physical therapy of our bodies and our joints, which over time deteriorate. The lower back, the knees, the hip, like you mentioned, these are the weight-bearing joints we're talking about here. When they go, it affects our quality of life enormously.
Yeah, and this is something that insurance obviously is not going to cover. It's not considered a drug. So everybody has a budget. Everyone has a budget, and there may be some things in the budget that can come and go and that you can juggle. This has to be part of the budget. There's no, we can't afford it this month. You have to afford it.
And sometimes, because nutritional supplements are so poorly regulated, people buy inferior products that don't work.
So that's another reason why
another
it's
thing.
so important to see somebody in the know like yourself that's been doing this for 30 years, because there's good and there's two sides of that coin. So you have a Food and Drug Administration, right? So an agency that's primarily lobbied and paid for by drug companies. So do we really want harsh regulations on supplements,
Good point.
that are going to help people from pharmaceutical companies and agencies that may not necessarily have the patient's best interest in mind at the end of the day?
Like the pharmaceutical company wanting to establish the definition of vinpocetine or reclassify it as a prescription drug,
Yes.
when in fact it's an herbal extract, so that they can own it.
So the flip side of that is, since they are not highly regulated, you have to go to somebody that actually knows what you need, what's in each product, that has done the research for you. And Jesse, I can't think of a better person. And you walk around the gym too. Both of us, we have such a great time there. It's a way of life. It makes us feel better, and all of these feed together. It's the oxygen that we get in our body, the euphoric high from pushing endorphins. Circulation is key, as we mentioned. Nutrition is so important, and I could honestly say in my practice, it's the most commonly overlooked part of the practice that really puts everything together. If you really want to make your results long lasting, if you want your knee to heal forever, if you want to have your hormones balanced and keep them balanced, if you start to feel good and you want to keep feeling good, you have to do this work. There's the musculoskeletal system, there's the respiratory systems, 11 major organ systems in the body. All of them require nutritional support.
And it doesn't even take that much time, because I've seen you work out. Like most people don't work out that way, myself included. But according to research, 3 times, 4 times a day, you go for a walk, a 20-minute walk, 30-minute. It's a huge difference compared to those that do nothing.
Yeah.
Or those of us, or when we're not doing anything. So even moderate, if you don't like a gym, if a gym's not your thing, that's okay, because we can walk with a stationary bike. There's so much that can be done, but it's that movement that is key to preserving health. And when we're talking about the joints, I've seen studies with MRIs that measure the cartilage, knee cartilage of arthritic patients before and 24 months later. Glucosamine patients, their cartilage measures an increase in cartilage, while the placebo group shows a decrease in cartilage from the previous 2 years. So if we're taking glucosamine chondroitin, and I like glucosamine sulfate better than the HCI, it seems to work better, and there's a little more research on it. I have a 2-for-1, by the way, for your podcast listeners. Solgar makes a real good one, glucosamine chondroitin, with MSM, which is a natural anti-inflammatory. But there are a lot of good products on the market. But if we're not taking glucosamine chondroitin, according to studies like the one I mentioned, we're allowing our cartilage to gradually wear away like the red eraser on a yellow pencil. You get to the point where the metal's scraping the paper, and that's how a lot of people's knees and joints are. So, once it's at that point, it's hard, to really heal it. Although I've seen patients that are in real bad shape and make a turn, a remarkable turn. It's interesting how the body responds to our behavior and what we provide or don't. If we're working out, if we're eating healthy in a relatively short period of time, someone who hasn't ever worked out or eaten healthy sees benefits and feels it. And in the same way for the person who, like yourself, who's been working out, eating healthy all the time, if you stop, if I stop, the body immediately expresses the lack of attention, and we break down. So it's really a constant obligation, like a job obligation, but it pays in health.
And the biggest mistake any of our listeners could make is to listen to this show and not take action. So not doing anything as far as joint rehabilitation, whether we're using tissue grafts that contain stem cells or ozone or prolozone therapy, they all work when you do them. But not doing anything as it relates to a joint is the fastest way to surgery. Not doing anything as it relates to your nutritional health is the fastest way to becoming part of a statistic. You know, the number one and leading two causes of death, they are what they are. You have to do things now in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s to have a great quality of life in your 80s, 90s, and beyond. So, Jesse, listen, I can't tell you how happy I am that you came to spend a little bit of time with us tonight.
You,
Healthland Nutrition is your place. Just let all the listeners know how they find you again.
Again, phone number, jot this down, 305-445-3320. I'm in Miami, Florida, on Coral Way and 32nd Avenue, 3202 Coral Way. And for your podcast listeners, you mentioned this program, this interview, buy one, get one free, CoQ10, omega-3, glucosamine, and some other things. Well, anything I can do that on, I will. And it's a legitimate buy one, get one free from premium brands.
Of a great product. Remember, with nutritional products, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get what you pay for, get a great deal, go visit my friend Jesse. We'll be back next time with other leading health topics. We'll be speaking about regenerative medicine, bioidentical hormones, the best way to get in shape in 30 days. Listen next time. I'm Dr. Joe Gambardella with Advanced Physical Medicine and Rehab. Visit us at apmrmiami.com and APMR Miami on Instagram, and we'll see you next time.